generosity, and this doubt becomes the foundation of the twins' quiet resistance. Lydia and James are no longer reacting emotionally. They are thinking strategically, understanding that the only way to defeat Mortimer is to take away the one thing he values more than his own children. This is where Aunt Oelia becomes crucial, because her distance from Mortimer allows her to see the situation clearly and recognize that the will everyone accepted may not be the real one. Season 3 builds tension by showing how difficult it is to challenge a powerful man without concrete proof, and this is why Percy's presence suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. The moment in Season 2 where Percy kissed a key at Cordelia's grave was not a random emotional gesture, it was a message hidden in plain sight, and Season 3 begins to explore its meaning with unsettling precision. That key represents access, secrecy, and a past that was never meant to stay buried forever. The idea that Cordelia trusted Percy with something so important suggests a bond far deeper than friendship, and Season 3 uses this to slowly shift Percy from a background figure into a central player. As the twins and Oilia start connecting the dots, it becomes clear that Percy may be the only person who knows where the real will is hidden, and more importantly, why it was hidden in the first place. The search for this document is not presented as a simple quest, but as a dangerous act that could cost them everything if Mortimer finds out. Every step toward the truth increases the risk, because exposing the real will would not just strip Mortimer of his shares, it would expose years of manipulation, forgery, and possibly murder. Season 3 carefully layers this suspense by suggesting that Cordelia's death may not have been an accident, and that the real will could contain evidence that directly ties Mortimer to her fate. This transforms the story from a family power struggle into a potential criminal downfall, raising the stakes beyond anything the series has done before. The possibility of Mortimer losing Beaufort is no longer symbolic, it becomes real, and with it comes the chance for the twins and Oilia to reclaim what was stolen from them. This section of the story makes it clear that Season 3 is not about revenge driven by anger, but justice driven by truth. And the closer they get to uncovering Cordelia's legacy, the more unstable Mortimer becomes. His confidence begins to crack, his control starts slipping, and for the first time, fear replaces authority. Season 3 uses this shift to show that power built on lies can only survive as long as no one dares to look too closely. And now, the twins are doing exactly that, step by step, fully aware that once the truth is revealed, nothing in the Maxton Hall world will ever be the same again. As the search for Cordelia's real will intensifies, Season 3 begins to reveal a much deeper and more unsettling mystery surrounding Percy, a mystery that could completely rewrite the family's history. Percy is no longer just a silent observer standing on the edges of the story. His past actions now demand explanation, especially his emotional connection to Cordelia that was hinted at but never explained. Season 3 slowly builds the idea that Percy's loyalty to Cordelia went far beyond professional respect, and that whatever they shared was strong enough for her to trust him with something as dangerous as the truth. The key he carried was not just symbolic, it was a promise, a responsibility, and possibly a confession of guilt or love that he has carried for years in silence. As clues start to align, the possibility that Percy and Cordelia had a secret relationship becomes harder to ignore, and with that comes a theory so shocking that it changes the way we look at James and Lydia entirely. The idea that Percy could be the twins' real father does not appear suddenly. It emerges slowly through emotional logic rather than physical evidence. James and Lydia's kindness, empathy, and moral strength feel completely disconnected from Mortimer's cruelty, manipulation, and emotional emptiness. Season 3 uses this contrast to raise a painful question. Can such goodness really come from someone as heartless as Mortimer? As James continues to sacrifice everything for truth and Lydia risks her safety for love, the story quietly suggests that their nature may come from someone else entirely. If Percy is their real father, it would explain Cordelia's protection, Percy's lifelong guilt, and Mortimer's obsessive need for control, because nothing terrifies a man more than the fear that his power was never truly legitimate. This theory transforms Percy from a passive character into a tragic one, a man who may have watched his own children suffer under another man's name without ever being able to intervene. Season 3 treats this revelation with emotional restraint, allowing tension to grow not through action, but through silence, stolen glances, and unspoken truths. The possibility of this secret coming out also introduces a new kind of danger, because if Mortimer discovers that James and Lydia are not his biological children, his reaction would not be forgiveness, but destruction. This makes every step toward uncovering the will feel like walking on a knife's edge, where truth could bring freedom or irreversible chaos. At the same time, Season 3 refuses to turn Percy into a simple hero, showing that his silence caused harm, even if it was born from fear or love. This moral complexity makes the story heavier, more realistic, and emotionally devastating. The closer the twins get to understanding Percy's role in their lives, the more they begin to question their own identities, their past, and the meaning of family itself. Season 3 is no longer just about defeating Mortimer, it becomes about discovering who they really are once his shadow is removed. And as this theory quietly takes shape, the audience is left with a haunting realization that sometimes the most powerful secrets are not hidden in locked boxes, but in the choices people make when they decide to stay silent for too long. While the battle over truth, identity, and inheritance grows darker, Season 3 does not forget the emotional cost carried by those who have already suffered the most, especially Lydia, whose storyline becomes one of the most painful and realistic arcs of the season. Even as Mortimer's control begins to crumble, Lydia remains trapped in a reality where love is treated like a crime and motherhood is forced into secrecy. The damage done to her reputation cannot be erased by exposing forged documents or stolen shares, because the law and society still refuse to recognize her relationship with Graham as anything other than wrong. Season 3 makes it clear that even if Graham is cleared of false accusations and eventually released, freedom does not automatically bring justice. Lydia cannot publicly acknowledge him as the father of her children without risking further punishment, which turns every moment of happiness into an act of quiet rebellion. This constant pressure shapes Lydia into someone stronger, but deeply wounded, forced to mature faster than anyone her age should have to. Season 3 uses her struggle to show that not all villains are individuals. Sometimes the system itself becomes the enemy. Yet within this pain, the story allows space for hope, not loud or dramatic, but patient and earned. The promise of Lydia turning 18 becomes more than a legal detail. It becomes a symbol of autonomy, a future where she can finally choose love without fear. Her eventual marriage to Graham is not framed as a fairy tale ending, but as a victory won through endurance, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. At the same time, Ruby and James begin to experience a different kind of healing, one built on mutual respect, shared trauma, and a love that survived manipulation and loss. Ruby's return to Maxton Hall does not magically erase what she went through, but it restores her belief in her own worth and potential. Season 3 carefully shows her rebuilding herself piece by piece, focusing on her ambitions, her intelligence, and her refusal to let Mortimer define her future. James, having stepped out of his father's shadow, starts to discover who he is without control or expectations suffocating him. His passion for painting, once dismissed as a useless hobby, becomes a form of expression and freedom, a way to process guilt, love, and identity. Together, Ruby and James represent a quieter kind of victory, one that does not rely on revenge, but on growth. Their relationship becomes the emotional balance of the season, reminding the audience that healing does not always come from destroying the past, but from choosing a different future. Season 3 uses their journey to contrast Lydia's struggle, showing two paths shaped by the same trauma, but leading to different kinds of hope. As these personal stories unfold, the series deepens its emotional impact, proving that Maxton Hall is no longer just about scandal or power, but about survival, resilience, and the long road toward peace. The Maxton Hall Season 3 trailer feels unbelievable because for the first time since that brutal Season 2 ending, it doesn't just tease pain, it promises healing, justice, and secrets powerful enough to change everything we thought we knew about this story. It has been a long time since Season 2 ended, yet the wounds it left are still open, especially for Ruby, whose expulsion shattered not only her future, but the emotional core of the series. Season 3 does not begin softly or calmly. It begins in the aftermath of destruction, where trust is broken, reputations are ruined, and silence has become the most dangerous weapon. Ruby's removal from Maxton Hall is not just a school punishment, it is Mortimer's declaration of power, a reminder that he controls narratives, institutions, and lives without hesitation. What makes this situation even darker is that the evidence used against Ruby is technically real, which traps her in a nightmare where truth alone is not enough to save her. The photo exists, it was taken years ago, and Mortimer's access to James's phone makes it impossible to deny its origin. This is what makes Season 3 feel so suffocating at first, because the story is no longer about proving innocence, but about redefining meaning. The only way Ruby can return is if someone brave enough steps forward and explains that the image does not show guilt, only a misleading angle, and that person must be James. This is where the emotional weight of Season 3 begins to grow, because James standing up for Ruby also means standing against his father, something he has never fully done before. While Cyril was the mind behind the original plan, his cowardice ensures that he will never admit the truth, leaving James as the only one capable of breaking Mortimer's illusion of control. When James finally speaks, it will not be just a confession, but a fracture in Mortimer's authority, and that single moment could force the school to reverse Ruby's expulsion. However, Season 3 makes it very clear that victory never comes without consequences. Mortimer will not accept humiliation quietly, especially not from his own son, and the moment James chooses truth, he chooses war. This is why the trailer feels so intense, because it hints that Ruby returning to school may be the spark that ignites something far bigger. Mortimer's reaction will not be limited to anger, it will be calculated punishment. With full access to the twins' phones, the truth about Lydia's pregnancy is no longer safe, and once Mortimer discovers it, his cruelty will reach a new level. Season 3 sets up a terrifying possibility where Lydia is cast out, not because she did something wrong, but because she no longer